Hello, animation fans, and welcome to another iAnimate podcast. I'm your host, Larry Vasquez, and you're listening to episode 82. In this episode, we have Alan Camilo joining us. Alan is a very talented animator as well as developer. He is the man behind the amazing AnimBot. So it was really a neat opportunity to get him in on this podcast. He's, as mentioned, he's animated at such studios as Sony Animation, Rainmaker, Method Studios, and has worked on such films as Storks and Hotel T2. He is a developer. He'll talk about some of the tools that he developed during his time there on Storks, as well as the genesis for AnimBot. If you've used AnimBot in production, you know how amazing this tool is. And so it was just a really neat opportunity to talk with Alan, to hear how, as an animator, to develop tools that has make our job easier, so to speak. So definitely check this one out. I think you'll enjoy it. Well, Alan, thank you so much for joining us in this podcast. I just got to say this really quick. We had this John Kennedy. He's an animator over at Rocksteady. He sent a message to me this morning. So this I thought was just cool. I wanted to share this with him, or with the guests and with you. He said, "Hey, Larry, just wanted to say a huge thank you for the podcast. Like many others, I enjoyed the animating, listening to the amazing background stories of Rick and yourself and all the awesome guests." He says, always picks me up and gets me motivated again through insanely late notes and mad deadlines. So it's just a great encouragement as we start a new podcast with you. People appreciate that. So thank you so much for taking your time to join us on this podcast.
Yeah, no worries. It's a pleasure for sure.
Awesome. Well, you've got an accent. I'd love to know where you're from, how you got into animation, what drove you to this fun and crazy industry.
Well, I'm Brazilian originally.
Okay.
So I always liked to draw when I was a kid, like many kids out there. But then I was like more into comic books at the time. I think it was, like maybe 8 or something. I don't remember exactly when it started. But when I was 15, I was taking some drawing classes in this school in there. And then my teacher came to me, and then he flipped some 2D animation drawings. Like that to me was like magic, because when you look at the TV and see the animation going on, you don't have like exactly like the grasp of what's going on.
Mm-hmm.
Because everything's already like perfectly done, finished.
Gotcha.
But when you get something like in between, like the process to actually do that, I think that was kind of a turning point to me, because that same day that I saw that, I never wanted to do comic books again. I never did anything more. I wanted to learn how to do that.
Gotcha.
So I started to try learning 2D animation. I was never like a good draftsmanship, but I wanted to be one someday. So I kept like drawing and trying to learn animation. One of the main challenges for me at the time was that there was no animation schools, like barely internet at the time. And it was hard to get materials to learn.
Mm-hmm.
Especially when that most of the good materials were in English, and I didn't speak English at all at the time. So I kept like just learning how to draw. I didn't even know that I needed to look up some English books and stuff like that. I didn't know anything. Like I was just like whatever was in front of me, I was trying to learn. So I kept doing that for a while, and I think that was when I was 15, right? So I'm talking like 8 years after that, when I was 23, that I was actually get my first gig as an animator.
Mm-hmm.
I was animating in, it was a feature movie in Brazil. But it was done in Flash, which is nowadays is Adobe Animate.
Yeah.
So I worked for a while with that. And it was cool and everything. And I made some other like 2D like in the paper as well, in the meantime, like as a freelancer. But then 3D was kind of happening for a while already. I think the first gig that I got as a 3D animator was right after the first Incredibles came out, because that movie was also like one awakening for me, because everything that came before Incredibles was not appealing to me personally.
Okay.
Because I was comparing like, Lion King and all those movies that I really like it to Toy Story, which is, as a movie, is a great movie, and Bug's Life also like a great movie, but like the the technology at that time was not comparable yet.
Yeah.
And to me, it was I was not aware that was just a matter of time to things to improve to a certain level. And I think Incredibles was the first one, because I think to me was the first movie with kind of humans, kind of characters that was appealing to me. So I tried to learn that stuff, and computer was never something hard for me to learn, because my brother had a computer, those with a green screen.
Yeah.
He had one of those at home when I was a kid. He's 10 years older than me. And I used to play with that a lot. And even to like play games with those computers at the time, you kind of had to at least to know how to launch the game on the command
on
line.
DOS. Yep.
Yeah. So computer was easy for me, let's put it that way. It was not like a blockage. So when I started learning it, I did some like 2 pieces of acting animation with those low man kind of rig that they had at the time. And I got a job in a production company as a animator right away. And like I think I found what I really where I'm really comfortable at, because as I mentioned, like I was never like a really good draftsmanship.
Gotcha.
And it was going to be a very very long journey for me to get where I wanted. And also like the industry was the 2D industry was kind of going down
on the decline.
Like Disney shut down the 2D studio at that time. Was pretty depressing for me, like to not having like something like a final goal anymore, so I decided to like make that kind of switch, and it was kind of good, I think, for me, because I started to really enjoying doing it in 3D. But again, like it was there was no like big production going on in Brazil at all. Like it was mostly commercials. I had the opportunity to work in some cinematics as well, but I got a gig with a student in Texas, RealFX.
Okay.
As a remote animator for Open Season 2.
Oh, very cool. Okay.
Which I think was a nice step for me.
Yeah.
To go from commercials to kind of start and transition to
feature
movies, to feature movies. And then I did that, and then 1 year later or 2 years later, I did another gig with them for the Ice Age Christmas special.
Okay.
It was a 20-minute film for DVD. And then that one was much higher quality compared to Open Season 2. And also because of the characters were so known by the time, the animation feedback was mostly about the characters, not much about the polishing or anything. Like was like, this is not Diego, for example, which was the mountain lion. So they wanted a certain specific kind of acting for each one of the characters because they already existed in other movies.
Right,
so we couldn't like do anything like too crazy. Which in Open Season 2 was a little bit more soft, I would say.
Okay.
Like they were not very picky about the characters in that sense, but or it was a little bit easier to grasp them.
Now you're still doing this from Brazil at the time?
At the time, yeah,
Okay.
still from
Just
Brazil,
remote.
and still, yeah, and still as a freelancer, because I had my full-time job still in this company. I was doing games and commercials and stuff like that.
Gotcha.
And I did some rigging as well.
Okay.
With that company. So then in 2012, I got a opportunity to go to start working for Sony on Smurfs 2.
Okay.
And I think that was when I kind of, okay, now I'm in the direction of my dream job. Let's do it that way. That's, I think I was, wait a second, 31 at the time. So it was a kind of a long journey, I think, since I was 15, wanting to do this. So it was a good moment for me going to Sony, even though it was just a short contract. It was 4 months only.
Okay.
Supposed to be like what we were like. They were wrapping up the movie, and they wanted animators, and then I think probably they didn't have any animators to hire anymore at the time, and I got the opportunity to
very cool
to go. So that's why I think it's good for people out there that wanted to get a job, is like to be ready and be patient, because at some point there's going to be an opportunity, and then you need to be ready for that. And then I think at least I feel that I was ready at that point. It wouldn't be very good if I got a job too early as well. So I think that was a good moment.
Yeah. Patient was the word I was thinking about when you were talking about that. I was just thinking the same thing. Yeah, you got to be patient. There's timing. There's we all grow as animators or artists at different rates. Opportunities arise. Here you are in Brazil. Something opens up in the U.S. to do remote. So it's just that timing and the ability to be patient and flexible, I guess. Exactly, so patient was that word was kind of coming to my mind. And so when you mentioned that.
Yeah. And also, like, there's no like end goal, I wouldn't say. Like it's always like you need to enjoy the process. Otherwise you'll live your entire life like wanting something, and then when you actually get there, you won't feel like it's not fulfilling.
Gotcha.
If you didn't enjoy the thing.
Yeah.
Now, of course, we learned that a little bit later.
That comes with maturity, huh?
Yeah.
Now, can I ask you, so by and large, you were self-taught. What were some of the things that you learned jumping into your first features? Open Season 2, and you mentioned, what was the other one at RealFX? The Mammoth, Ice Age. What were some of the things that you kind of were, those plateaus or growing process, those stepping stones? You're primarily self-taught. You were obviously put in the time to get to where you were at, but what were some of those things now, being in a studio and on a feature type level, that were kind of those aha moments for you?
Well, I think it was, to me, I would say first is to understand that when you're animating, we're not just moving things. Like we keep moving things is something that you need to learn, like how to move things smoothly if you wanted to make it smoothly, or the timing of the moves and everything. Like all of that is the technical part. And I think that's important. But I think for me, like what separates a junior animator or let's say like an aspiring animator from a professional one is the fact that you can actually you can make the character look alive somehow. It's not just moving. You're making the characters think and act like he was a person, or like you feel like there's a character in it.
Yeah.
It's not just move.
Yeah.
So you still can make any good animation just with move. I'm not saying that's not it's black or white kind of separation. But I think that actually, like, especially for feature films, you wouldn't hold the audience if there's no character, if you don't care about them
Right.
on the screen. So the animator needs to convey that feeling to the
Personhood, huh?
audience. Yeah, I think
Yeah.
that is still something that I kind of there was a spark to me, I think, especially on the Ice Age movie that I worked on, but it's not something that I learned right away, and that I don't feel that I'm still don't have things to learn. I still have a lot of things to learn in that direction. I think that's right now when what I try the most to do
Gotcha.
is try to get that feeling uh, through the animation. It's not only like get like nice arcs or whatever.
Yeah. Those two worlds work together, huh? But that's a great
Yeah,
point, because particularly, here at iAnimate, when we're teaching character animation, um, a lot of the students and stuff are kind of just continuing developing those technical skill sets that you're talking about, but they can kind of be divorced from the end goal of the animation and why we're doing this technical aspect. Well, is to bring believability to this as a character. So yeah,
yeah,
that's a great point.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And I think like one other thing that I learned right when I was working at Sony, especially because before that, since I was working from home, I could, put more hours on the shot if I needed to. So it was kind of more flexible that way.
Mm.
I didn't like the supervisors didn't know how many hours I was putting in, so that was not important, not to studio or to myself at that time. Like I need to finish the shot and that was it. But at Sony, I actually had a 48-hour job, so I needed to kind of finish my animation or meet my deadlines by
Gotcha.
that time. So that was when workflow for me was important. You know? Like when I needed to find a way to like and by the way, like when I joined it, I wasn't I mentioned that I was ready, but I was not nearly where most of those guys there was.
Gotcha. Yeah. Yeah.
So I kind of I still had to catch up.
Yeah.
So I have just that 4 month job. I didn't have like 1 year to slowly improving. No, I had to go there and then finish my shots and show work so I could continue working there. That was my plan.
Yeah.
So it was kind of a pressure for me.
I'm sure, particularly with the pulling you in towards the end of a project when they're trying to wrap it up, they're moving in.
Yeah.
This isn't. You don't have a whole lot of time to ramp up, I'm sure.
Yeah. And another thing that I noticed was when you are working at the studio, there's not gonna be like someone. I mean, if you are lucky, maybe, but at least to me, like I never seen that. Not happened to me or to other people where there's like an experienced guy that is really, really willing to sit on your side and teach you stuff. There's nothing like that. You need to be ready.
Mm.
Like there's gonna be like one thing one day, another thing another day, and then you learn from someone doing that, hearing that. But it's not like someone will sit on your side and
Walk you through it.
teach you. Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's why it's important to do this when you are in an animation school, for example. You need to like absorb as much as you can, because at the studio you're gonna be on your own pretty much.
Yeah. No, that's
So
great to be teachable, huh? At this time.
yeah.
Now, were you doing remote from at Sony as well, or did you get a visa to go work over there at the time?
Yeah, I moved.
Okay.
Physically moved to
Okay.
Vancouver at the time. So that was the other part that was kind of a very checkpoint in my life where I had to give up everything that I not give up, but change completely from. So after those 4 months, they actually extended for 3 more months, my work. And then I did some marketing stuff for Smurfs as well. And then the movie was done at the same time that Cloud with Chance of Meatballs, I think was the second one. I don't remember. Yeah, I think it was the second one. It was done at the same time pretty much. And they didn't have any other movie right away. So they were working on a Spider-Man one there, but that was pretty much it. So they laid off, I think it was like 200 animators or something. And I went with the wave. But one nice thing that they did was that they called the studios in the city and say, okay, we are laying off those guys, and if you guys wanted to apply to those studios, they made that connection.
Oh, that's fantastic
for us.
Yeah, that's awesome.
And then I ended up getting a job at Method.
Okay.
I worked at that movie, Maze Runner. Was my first VFX movie.
Now, how was the transition from feature to VFX?
It's very different. It's I mean, you're, as an animator, you can do both things. I think most of us at least can do both things, but it's such a different world,
right?
At least to me. Like, it's a different approach of animation, a different, like, you cannot like most of the time you cannot like block in stepped for VFX. It doesn't look good most of the time because there's a plate of a character, a real like person running and grabbing your character, whatever it is, and your character in step. And the directors, I mean, they are
coming
usually
from that
like
world,
they cannot, unless they come from an animation background, which is mostly not the case. They cannot understand very much if you just put it in blocking.
Gotcha.
So most of the blocking, it was almost like a polish already, like just like missing like the real like nitty and gritty things, but was almost like a polish step. And when you do a polish step and then you have to change things like very broadly, and it happens a lot, like, so change things here, let's try something else and whatever. You need to be like very open mind, because you cannot love your shot at any point, because you might need to drop everything down and start all over again. And that was the another thing that I found to me, where I had a certain kind of a workflow where when I'm blocking, and then once I go to step to spline, I'm splining it, and then if I need to go back to blocking, it's much harder. It's like building a house where you already like built the walls and the pipes inside it, and then suddenly the guy asks you to change the pipes. You're gonna have to tear down everything.
Right.
So you need to come up with methods of doing that without losing too much time, or wrecking everything in your animation.
Gotcha.
So I think that was an important thing that nobody ever told me at that point.
Now, I haven't worked in VFX yet, but I also understand that time frames for shots can be much different. You can be on a shot much longer or something like that, because you're getting so many iterations from different levels and things of that nature. Did you find that to be true as well?
In my case, yes.
Okay.
I didn't have much experience. It was just 3 months, and then later on in the future, I worked on Thor Ragnarok. I worked, I think, for 6 or 7 months.
Oh, very cool.
But it was the same thing. It was the same company as well. So I don't have too much to compare. But to me, was something like this. Like, I was working, sometimes a shot would be like one day. It was a quick one, and that was it. But most of the shots I was working like for 3 months. And it was like a 5-6 second shots. It was not like a long shot or anything. Because I think it's because of the hierarchy and how a movie works, and the constraints are different as well. Like, so the camera is already done. They cannot like go there and film the thing
Right.
again. Like you need to respect certain constraints, and I think they want to try more stuff. Or also, I think there's a fact where nowadays, like the company that's making the movie, let's say Disney or Marvel or whatever, are working on a movie, they hire like not only one studio but
Right.
a few studios.
Yeah.
So each one of them gets some shots, like sequences, and then they respond to a VFX supervisor in the studio local, and then there's another VFX supervisor that supervises all the studios. So there's all of those layers of things
Yeah.
where and your animation shot doesn't get every day to that guy at the top. So sometimes you have one meeting a week or every 2 weeks with that guy over here. So in that meantime, this guy over here, it's kind of trying to get the best of it. So when he brings up there, it's all right.
Uh-huh.
So sometimes this guy is trying one, two, three versions, two different versions of the same shot to show that guy because
He's got one
you don't
chance
have
with him
that
in
many
2 weeks.
iterations.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's different from when I was working at Sony, where we had daily meetings twice a day with the director.
Yeah. Gotcha. That's what I've heard. Yeah. Now, did you find it being frustrating then working on the shots that long, or you're just like, hey, this is just part of it, and you just adapt to? You're pretty flexible and that kind of stuff.
I won't lie to say that was not frustrating. It was. I mean, you want to produce more things.
Yeah.
Like it's kind of frustrating. We're working like 3 months in a studio and get out with like 3 shots.
Yeah.
Like 3 small shots that you cannot even put in a reel. They're all over the place. But it's how it is. Like when you are like understand a little bit more of the system, and especially when I worked as a lead at Sony in Storks, so that made me understand a little bit more what was going on in the planning part.
Gotcha.
So it's not easy as well. Like you have 100 animators, like you cannot give like those perfect like 5 sequence shots to one guy, so his reel is gonna look awesome. It's just like that doesn't happen that way, because the sequence came in, you have, I don't know, like 20 animators to distribute the shots on that sequence, and you need to be efficient. And like it's just like the goal is to finish the movie. Let's put it that way. Like all of those other things come second. And once you understand this, it's fine. I mean,
it is pretty amazing that when you think about it, that we're able to produce something like this that is cohesive. It's, there's consistency across the board by and large. You're going to have your money shots and ones that kind of just help. But by and large, it's cohesive. But you're doing all that with, multiple people in different levels, and to be able to kind of all work towards that same goal and actually produce something that's cohesive together. It's pretty remarkable. So,
yeah. It is for sure. Like and doing that, like nowadays that they do in 8 months or 1 year, like a whole movie, like the animation, it's amazing. For sure.
Now, I saw on Maze Runner on your demo reel, it was a really cool creature shot, kind of running and chasing this person here. Had you had much work with creature animation?
I mean, I had done some very short things, like an elephant walking or things like that for commercials, but nothing at that level.
Gotcha. What did you learn in that process? The reason why I ask is we've got multiple levels of animation, what we teach: feature, games, and creature. So different kind of disciplines a little bit, obviously all dealing with animation, but kind of a little bit more specific. So what was it that you learned maybe with that shot or that project where you had to kind of think of maybe a little bit differently?
I think it was you had to be more realistic. Like you need to nail the physics at the same time that you are planning whatever the character is doing.
Uh-huh.
Because if it doesn't feel like the weight is right or anything like physically is not correct, it's gonna kill your shot. I think for as for like a cartoony animation, that's really not the most important part in my
Gotcha.
opinion. It's more like it is entertaining, so that's good. Like the character is flying through the air. Like one shot, for example, that I love and that is totally physically incorrect is one at Moana where Maui turned into a whale, and then he turned into a whale in the air and then drops and splashes the water. Like if it was a real whale, it would drop like so slowly, and it was not gonna be fun. The shots, no, I mean, but it was if it was a VFX, you would have to do it that way.
Gotcha. Gotcha.
It would feel weird.
Yeah. Yeah. I gotcha.
So I think that's actually the thing that doesn't attract me too much in VFX. That's why I like cartoony animation more,
Mm-hmm.
because you can be more creative as an animator because you don't have those kind of constraints. You can pretty much go crazy, of course, like within the boundaries of the project, but it's much more flexible.
Gotcha. So now you went to Method. You ended up back at Sony. How did you get back at Sony?
So a Method was only that they didn't have an animation department at that time. That was kind of their first animation work in Vancouver, at least. And then there was this 3-month project, and it was done. And then I got a job. They kept doing that, but I left because I needed to work in my visa, because if I didn't have a job, I needed to go back to Brazil. I didn't want to do that. And then I got a job at a studio called Rainmaker.
Uh-huh.
I worked in a feature film for that PS3 game, Ratchet and Clank.
Oh, very cool. Okay. My brother worked at Insomniac for a bit and worked on one of the Ratchet and Clank ones. I forget which one, but yeah, he really enjoyed it.
Yeah, it was a really great game and everything. Like the movie didn't make very well, but yeah, the games are a big
yeah
thing.
So this is for the movie of it though.
Yeah
I remember the movie.
And then I think I worked there for like a year and a few months or so. And then at that point, Sony was still like just doing maybe just Spider-Man. I'm probably not saying correctly. They might be doing something else, but it was not too much. They were they shrank a lot since Smurfs 2. And then after that, the Ratchet and Clank, they were ramping up again for Hotel Transylvania 2 and Angry Birds.
Okay.
So they grabbed everyone again. Pretty much. Like all of those guys that were working with me at Rainmaker, I mean, not all of them, but most of them came with me to work at Sony again.
Gotcha.
So I was working at Hotel 2 at that time.
And now, were you an animator on that one, or what was your position on Hotel T2?
Just animator, yeah.
Okay.
Animator. And and then I worked there for another 2.5 years or so.
Gotcha. Now that one was very cartoony. So was this kind of your first venture into something that was that far pushed?
For sure, yeah. And I mean, looking back at my shots now, I think like, man, I could have gone much more crazier with it.
Gotcha.
Like I was very like stiff.
Do you find that to be true? I found that animating to be true. You think you're kind of pushing it pretty good, and then you look at it later, you're like, man, I could have done it more. So I've found that I try to push it further than what I think, because I already know I'm kind of keeping it a little more confined in my mind. So have you found that same thing to be true?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Every time.
Here's my limit. I got to push it further here.
Yeah. I think if you got to a point where you look back at a 5-year-old shot and then you still think it's perfect, there's something wrong. You need, yeah,
I
you need to
like that.
keep like, need to keep finding errors and things to improve.
Yeah, yeah.
That's the fun part.
Any particular fun anecdotes working on that show, or anything that you kind of really just learned working on something that cartoony?
Let me see.
Because that was with Gindi as well, right?
Yeah, yeah. I think Gandhi was something remarkable for me. Like the way that he directs, he's an animator, so he would draw stuff
Mm.
on the screen. Like and it was not something that he would like think about it and draw. He was like with his coffee in his hand and eating something, and then oh, can do this here and here, here, and doing those amazing drawings like out of the blue. Like it was a normal thing that he
He's seeing
does.
it, huh?
Yeah. So, and he keeps like coming up with gags and stuff in the shot as
Gotcha.
well. And that was kind of a very fun thing for me to see that, and then trying to match those poses that he would draw was fun as well.
Nice. Now, how much input to the gags and things of that nature do you guys have on shows like that? I know it can kind of vary from director to director. Sometimes they just hit it and it's like, this is run with it, or there's some are a little more open and willing to, and I say it more open only because maybe the time permits. Sometimes it's just, hey, we don't too many chefs in the kitchen. We got to just keep moving this thing here. So how did you find working with Gindi on this project as an animator? Did you have some input here and there, or how did that work?
It was super super easy because in that part, because he knows what he wants all the time, and he's not picky about it. Like if he likes the gag that you proposed, he would just like enhance that for you. So
Gotcha.
okay, so I got the idea, but what about we push this here and there, and then it would be done. He
Love
wouldn't
it.
be like I want exactly this. I don't like what you did. Like he would try to go with whatever you came up with
And make it
first,
work.
as
Gotcha.
long as that would help telling the story.
Uh,
I felt so. I think that's pretty decent amount of room for the animator to come up with
gotcha.
stuff.
Yeah, that makes it fun.
That show.
Yeah, that makes it fun. So after Hotel T2, what did you go on from there? Did you stay at Sony?
I
Was
stayed
that
at
Storks?
Sony. Was Starks.
Okay.
And that was the first movie that I worked as a lead, and that was kind of a got me surprised actually when I was called to be a lead,
Yeah.
because I didn't think I was very ready at that time. But then I think sometimes you need that kind of push
Mm.
to learn, like
Yeah. Yeah.
when the water is here, you look at, okay, I need to learn how to swim right now. I gotta do it.
How did you find
So
leading? Was that personality wise? Was it something that you found maybe having come through the trenches like you did, and having to be self taught and a lot of that? You were more patient. You were easier to work with on that. How did you find being a lead worked for you?
I think there's pros and cons. For me, like, was great in that movie, but I wouldn't be working as a lead forever. I think it's a role, at least at Sony, it's a role where you have a lot of responsibility and you work a lot of hours, and also you don't get as much time to animate. Like
Gotcha.
I think I got maybe like 25% of the time free to animate.
Uh-huh.
But on the other hand, could I would quote that because it's not like that, but I could pick up the shots for me to animate
Okay.
within my sequences,
Uh-huh.
as long as I could finish the shot by the time that it was supposed to be finished. So I
Uh-huh.
had less time. So sometimes I really wanted to animate that shot, but I knew that I wouldn't be able to do it
Gotcha.
with, by the due date. So so that was the good part. And learning how the production works, it's kind of fun as well. But again, like, it's fun doing once or once in a while, but every time I think it would be very, very very, very heavy weight for me. It's not for me. Like, I know a lot of guys there that are lead in one project after another, and they take that very smoothly.
Just personality wise there.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
But I mean, I don't know if I answered.
Yeah. I was just curious because I think it's just funny because personality, some people, the leadership part comes a little maybe more natural, and sometimes it can be again that double-edged sword, so to speak. You know, a guy or gal might be in that position where maybe that just fits them as far as personality wise, but maybe they're less patient because they're ready to go gung ho, so to speak.
That part was okay for me. I think because I was always like self-taught and in the studio that I worked, I was rigger and animator, and I helped with connecting other departments naturally. Like, it was a small studio, right?
Yeah.
So we used to do more things. So for me, that part was okay. What was harder, I think, was not being able to relax and animate, because I was sitting at my desk saying, okay, I'm going to start animating. And then 5 minutes later, the chat's starting to pop up and you had to either go to a meeting or help some animator. It was interruptions every time. I couldn't concentrate. So by the end of the movie, it was good for me because I learned how to animate with
distractions, so to speak.
Yeah. It's not easy, but you can learn.
Yeah. And that's another great point, because I go, okay, maybe personality wise, you're like, hey, I got into this industry to animate, and now I'm animating less, and so I don't like this position. I get that. Totally get it. Now, again, looking at your reel, I noticed on Storks that you have animation, R&D, and tool development, as well as animation supervising. Obviously, the R&D and tool development. How did you get into that? Because you're the creator of AnimBot, which we'll get into here. I'd love to talk about that.
Yeah.
But I'm assuming this has some of the genesis of getting that familiarity with developing tools and such, right?
Yeah.
So how did you get into this role? I mean, you come from an animation standpoint. You mentioned that you've done rigging and stuff, but you're obviously an animator, artist, very cartoony. How did you get into the development and technical aspect?
It's kind of two worlds that doesn't seems to match, right? Like animator and programmer. Like, you need to choose one or the other.
That's a unicorn there, man. But, that's where you can get that together. Works great.
Yeah, I don't understand that either. Like, I kind of like both. I like more animation for sure, but I still like programming. It's kind of a puzzle for me.
Gotcha.
Like, you wanted to do something, and then once you like program and the thing does what you want, it's such a pleasure to a feeling.
Yeah.
But anyways, like, I need to go back a little bit to explain how I I got into this. So when I was wanted to be a 2D animator, and Flash came out, the Macromedia Flash. I think 3.0.
Okay.
It had a few versions already. But then I saw that in the computer. I found, wow, that's cool. I can animate in that way. Like, tweening stuff was something like really fun for me. Like, you can put a pose here, a pose there, and then the computer would calculate whatever it's in between. I felt like, oh, that's amazing. Anyway, I started to kind of learn to use that software for fun. And then at some point, I decided to do a website for me, just to showcase my work. And at that time, everybody was doing Flash websites. Those where you would visit the site, it would take like 5 minutes to load. And it was great. Like people loved it. And nowadays, if it's just like 2 seconds, people wouldn't.
They're done, huh?
Just yeah. But then I start to learn the action scripts in Flash that would help. Like you click here, the character would do something. You click there, he would do something else. Like you could even like do some small games.
Yeah.
So I started to like I read a book like 1,500 pages of Flash action script. I read the book from start to finish because I wanted
one of the few people who read it, huh?
Yeah, probably the only one. Somebody did that book saying, nobody's gonna read this.
Yeah,
just do it. And I did. So I learned how to make that website, and then that website was actually what got me that gig that I mentioned, the feature film in Flash.
Oh, okay.
Was because of the website, not because the work that I had in the website, was the website itself.
How funny.
Yeah, right. And then when I was working in that movie in Flash, I developed. Nobody knew exactly what they were doing. There was a first feature movie. They had done some stuff. Some of the guys there had done some stuff in Flash, small stuff, but the feature film wise was the first. So everybody was experimenting with things. And one of the things that I started doing it eventually there was writing scripts to help doing things faster, like overcome those things, like like when sometimes you just need to do something quick in a paper or on a paper that you do, but then computer it takes like 10 minutes to do the same thing. Like I couldn't bear that kind of thing. And then I found that we could program stuff in Flash, but it was a very simple thing, like like on Photoshop. I don't know if Photoshop does that. Yeah, but I think it does. You have like an action panel where you start doing stuff and it records what you're doing.
Yeah.
And then you can save that as a macro script.
Yep.
It started like that.
Something like that,
first. But then you can grab that macro that you did and open on the text editor or whatever, and then you see what's going on, like in coding wise. It's doing this, selecting that, and doing this, and then I started to grab those things and changing the code itself. So sometimes I would do once, and then I wanted to do this 10 times. I would just do a loop, 1 to 10, do this, boom. And then I started making those little scripts. And then eventually I learned that we could program an interface with buttons and places where the user could actually write, okay, if I want 10 times, I would write 10 and hit the button. It would do that. And then I started doing this for myself. And then eventually the studio started using my tools. And then when I left, 2 years later, 2 years was in that process, I left. Some guy in the studio mentioned to me, you should sell this stuff, man, out there. I said, okay, I'll try. And then I grabbed all of those random scripts that I did, and then I tried to convert them in a more like a commercial way that was more easier to use. Because when you do a script, when you make a script for you, you don't you know exactly the situation that you're going to use it. So you don't prevent errors from happening if you use it for something else. So that was one thing that I tried to do, like wrap it up all those things and prevent situations, and like make a better interface, easier to understand, simple. Again, like it was more like something that I like to do as a puzzle thing for me. That helps me with what I really wanted to do with which was animation. And then at the studio that I worked in 3D in Brazil, I did some scripting here and there as well. but that was always like very amateur, and I never like really stopped to learn anything. Like I was always like Googling stuff, and I needed to do one specific thing. I was Googling for that specific thing. And once I done that, that's it. I didn't want to know exactly what was going on. I just wanted to learn piece by piece. And then I went to Sony. I think that was the turning point where it started to become more important to me, the workflow thing that I mentioned. When it was, like animate fast, and Sony had some tools in there that helped with speed up the workflow. They had their own tools. I also had some tools that like everybody like hunt tools on the internet and have like 5 or 10 there that was always like taking wherever it goes and use them. So I had those as well, but Sony had some much better ones for most of the cases. But the problem to me was that I worked for 7 months only for at Sony, and I kind of got used to use those tools. And then when I went to Method, it was their first animation movie. They didn't have barely a pipeline for animation there. They were building at the time, and no animation tools at all. So I set my computer and I said, where's that button? How do I do this again without the tool?
Vanilla Maya.
Yeah. And then I started to grab those scripts again. But then since I was aware that I was only going to work for 3 months, I thought to myself, okay, let me try to at least make something very easy to install. Like I wanted to like drag and drop and boom.
You can go to any studio for 3-4 months and do the same thing, right? Yeah.
Yeah, because it's such a pain to like set up hotkeys, set up this you need to copy to this folder, this to another folder, that to another folder, and that's the script to launch this one, that's the script to launch that other one. It's always a pain to set up.
Yeah.
It took me like a week to go back to that same state that I was before. Yeah. And it was a worst state because I didn't have those tools that were better.
Yeah.
So I kind of was a step back for me, it felt. But I was lucky that there at Method, I met a guy that was a rigger and also an animator. And I become we become friends, and he taught me a lot of things in Python. That was my first experience with Python. And then I did that. Like I made a small toolbar, and I knew like right at the bat that I want a toolbar at the top of the timeline, not up there on the shelf, right? Because I want to work just there on the one place.
This is what I want to do. Yeah.
Yeah. So that was the first thing. And then I started to plug in all the buttons. It was just shortcuts to launch those tools that I grabbed from the internet. That was kind of the first A-Tools version. The A-Tools is the
tool that
I did before.
I used A-Tools. Yes. That's so funny. I forgot you were the developer of that before AnimBot.
Yeah. So that was the first A-Tools version. It was just like pretty much stealing tools from everyone and putting in there.
Compiling
not stealing because they were free, but I did that, and it was the process of doing that small bar. I started to learning how to make a button, how to make things. Oh, Python, you do that way, and this and that. And then eventually I said to myself, I don't like this twin machine because I click on a button here and the focus of the mouse, whatever, goes to that window. So I cannot switch frames anymore. I need to click on the viewport to switch frames.
Gotcha.
So I need to like click here, click on the viewport. It was one more click to do it. And it was those small things that I didn't like. I started to say, okay, let me grab all of those buttons of the Twin machine and put it down there. So I don't have this extra step all the time. It took me like 3 months to do just that. At the beginning, it was because I didn't know anything. Like, okay, so I did it, and then I learned more. And then I said, okay, let me try then this plugin here. I don't like this. Let me try to fix that. Not fix that, but doing it my way. And then I did that. And then one day I remember, like, as if it was today, like I was looking at what I was doing, and it was like a spark. I said, okay, I don't need to taught myself to use those tools that way. I can make whatever tools I want to work the way I want them to work. It was like, my head was like,
why did I think about this before? Yeah.
And then I started to like writing down and trying to find tools to tackle workflows like from scratch. So I had something like, okay, I need to make this tool closer to, I don't know, like whatever tool it is, but I had some problem when I was animating, not a problem, but something that I needed to do. And then, okay, what could help me to do this faster? I don't think faster is the right word though, but I think it's more like, I don't want to feel like I'm using tools.
Right.
If that makes sense.
Yeah.
I want to just, it's like driving. You don't know that you are steering the wheel or pressing on the gas. You are the car when you are there.
Yeah.
if another car hits you, you don't say like they hit my car. They said you hit me.
Yeah.
Like you become the car. So it's something like that. Okay. So I started to doing that, and it was like exponential because as you are doing, you are learning, and you are doing, you are learning. It's a kind of a process that goes in a loop.
Yeah.
And then I was eventually, when I worked at Rainmaker, that year was the year that I actually developed tools. Because I was developing at home and using at the studio. And what I did was I kind of replaced everything. Like you become like all the code in there. I eventually everything was written by me.
How you wanted it, yeah.
Yeah. And one thing that I did not by accident, but with a purpose of making easier for me was, since I was working at home and using at the studio, I put it on the internet in a way that when I launched Maya, you would automatically update.
Gotcha.
Like download that latest version
script
and install
and stuff,
on top of it.
Nice.
And then I told like my friends that were working there about the tool, or they would ask what that was, and then so they will start to using it as well. A few of them. But
you had your beta testers there, huh?
Yeah, exactly. They like people get very excited about it.
Yeah.
When they see that they can do something faster, it's kind of like, wow, I want something more.
Yeah, absolutely.
They would come up with ideas and stuff. And then I went back to Sony. And of course, I did the same thing. Like I installed my tools, and I was not even using their tools anymore. Because I was at that time I liked my own way of doing things, so I was using just that. And since they hired a lot of people at once, everybody was in that kind of phase where you just started working,
ramping up again.
Yeah, you are looking at new things. So I think because of this, the tool there spread like wildfire in the studio. Like everybody started using tools there. Not everybody, but a lot of people. And my friends knew that I did. Maybe some friends that they told about it knew, but the third person didn't know. Like they
anybody in-house did, yeah.
Yeah, they thought it was an in-house tool. And what was the problem with that was wherever there was an error with the tool or a conflict, whatever, they would send tickets for the pipeline to fix it. And I didn't even know that there was that many people using or anything. Like I was just at my desk animating, thinking that was just my friends at Rainmaker were and they came up to me at some point, like the head of the character structure pipeline super plus supreme whatever. He came to, like, the head of the department came to me, and he was a very nice guy, by the way, but he went to me like very like serious and on my side, which is something that doesn't happen at Sony almost. Like people usually like send your emails or messages. They don't come to your desk. But this guy, yeah, I was working and suddenly like a head came here, and then I look at it, and there was this guy, and then he said and who he was, and then he was asking about this tool, like what is this tool, like what does it do, and he didn't told me exactly why he was there, and not that those problems were happening. I didn't know, like I was aware of that later. But then he just asked some stuff and said, okay. And then he went away. Okay. I thought, okay, I'm fired. I was just waiting for the email. But it was okay. I kept working for a while. And then eventually what happened was there was kind of a conflict with the tool for one specific show. I think it was Alice in Wonderland that they were doing that. There was one specific issue there that stopped the publishing process or something like that on a Saturday, which I wasn't there, and nobody was there, and nobody knew what the fucking tool that was. So it was a big thing, like for everybody. Like they didn't like it at all, like the fact that had a tool, an outside tool like this, written by an animator, and so many people using it. So they tried to get rid of it, the pipeline, and that's the department of tools there. Which looking back now makes sense. I think if I was working there as a pipeline guy, I was going to think of the same thing. Like it is a problem, like a tool reading like such a mature way, using that that much.
Yeah.
But what happened was animators on the show, especially on the Angry Birds show, they really like it to using it, and even the supervisor, the animation supervisor, was aware that the animators were using it and liked it, and they fought back. They didn't want them to remove
take it away.
Yeah. So it was that back and forth going on there. And I mean, I learned that later again. Like I was just animating. Imagine like I was just with my phone animating and all of that happening. But then this guy came to me again eventually and said, okay, so animators want your tool. They don't want us to remove it. So we need to find a way to either, the decision is yours, basically they said. Either this tool becomes official, which means owned by Sony.
Yeah.
Or we're gonna have to remove it completely. So I said, okay, I'm gonna think about it. And then I talked to my friend that's R&D developer and rigger, top notch there. And I talked to him about like, what do you think I should do? And then he right away like said, accepted. You're gonna learn a lot. Like don't mind about like giving your tool away. Let's put it that way. You can rewrite them later. You're gonna learn, and it's gonna be good for you. I said okay. And then
that's a good way of looking at it.
Yeah. So I kind of accepted. And at that point, what happened was that any updates that I did for A tools, it was going to be owned by Sony. That was the kind of the deal. And by the way, they didn't pay me anything, just if you are curious about. And that was okay. Like I was not looking for money anyways, like working as a developer. I wanted to be an animator. They were paying my salary as animator. So that was okay. What I didn't know was the amount of work that I was getting into it, on top of what I was already doing.
Mm.
So I became in a situation where I had to support the tool inside the studio and also deliver my shots. And my animation supervisor didn't even know that I was doing that. And the pipeline guys didn't know about my delivery dates. And I don't think they even give a shit about it. If there's a problem, fix it and deal with it.
Yeah.
So that was what happened. Like, and at the beginning was, as I mentioned, like was a very amateur tool. And there was so many things. Like I didn't know conventions. I didn't know, like anything about it. Was so many things that was wrong in the code that I had to learn how to do it properly. So there was this guy at the pipeline where he actually taught me a lot of things. Like there was a really nice guy. I appreciate until today this guy. So he learned. Okay, so he said, "Don't do this, don't do this, don't do this. Do this that way, do this that way. Clean up here, clean up there, blah blah blah." It was not a good code at the end, but at least like there was no like big issues with it anymore. So eventually got to a code where I think it was very hard to maintain, to be honest, looking back now. But at least like was not like a big mistake. It was not like intrusive. It was not having conflicts with anything anymore. And I learned what those do's and don'ts.
Right.
So that was kind of, that was this chapter of the story.
Gotcha.
So I did that.
And that was all during, because like I said, on your demo reel on Storks, that's where it has animation, R&D, tool development. That's when you're doing this? Or is that?
That was when I was working on a hotel too.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And then when I started working on Storks, and I was developing new tools as well. Like I was supporting tools, developing new things, delivering my shots. It was good for me because I learned how to animate very, very fast. Like I was doing all those things. Sometimes I would take like one entire day just coding, and I would still deliver my shots.
Nice.
One day before I was supposed to.
Okay, so just out of curiosity then, because we have obviously animators who are listening to this as well. What were some of the things that you learned? Was it just, okay, let me back up again. How did you become faster then? What was it that you developed then as an artist that helped you to deliver your shot still on the right time?
I think it's a sum of everything. Like Twin Machine helps a lot for me. Like my workflow as pose to pose speeds up a lot because you can key everything. And it doesn't matter, like I don't need to go to, let's say I'm polishing fingers. I barely polish fingers nowadays because when I'm keying the keys, I already know that if I want to ease out, I don't need to go to every single curve and ease out the tangents. I just can place a few more keys in there to indicate to the computer that he needs to do that.
Gotcha.
Easy way. So if you key everything that way, the body, everything, like it's just you hit spline and it's 95% done. Almost,
Gotcha.
If you do it that way. So splining was something that I used to spend a lot of time, and then by using that method with the Twin Machine, I pretty much I was just like splining, polishing the main controls.
Gotcha. That makes sense. So you approach it your workflow in regards to, like you said, keying everything, more like a 2D animator, huh? These are drawings here.
Totally, like,
Yep.
yeah.
Yep.
And I
I love
don't
it.
say that this is the best method or
Right.
anything, like, because I learned how to do other things later. But I think it's important to know that, because it's a very basic approach, and it's good to know if you are doing like if you work on a show, for example, Spider-Man, that's kind of on twos.
Yeah.
You need to learn how to do this, because it's not like splining and then keying every 2 frames and changing to a step. It doesn't work that way. It's a completely different mindset on twos and on ones. So you kind of need to learn how to manipulate keys. Let's put it that way.
Gotcha.
Like in a massive way.
Gotcha.
So if you use a twin machine, no, it doesn't matter if the character has 10,000 controls, 10,000 keys on that frame. You're gonna press one button and it's gonna adjust all of those keys for you.
Yeah.
So I think that was a biggie for me.
Gotcha.
Like not spending time on the graph editor too much.
Gotcha. Okay. No, that's awesome.
And the other thing is space switching. If you are blocking, for example, and your character is either FK or an IK arms that's parented to the chest, in a chest space. If you're blocking that way, it helps, because if you turn the character, the arms are going to go with it. So you have something for free already to start with. But when you are splining, I found that if it's parented to the chest again, it's harder to get the arcs working well. And it's also harder because if you are tweaking the chest, you are going to change the hand. Sometimes you don't want it.
Yeah.
So I was working in a method where I was switching back and forth all the time, the spaces like that. So sometimes I would want to the chest, sometimes it's on the hip, sometimes it's in the world space. And at the end, when I was splining, I would usually like just turn everything to world space. And I mean, for most cases at least. And that helped me a lot as well. I didn't need to commit like to a single space for the whole shot. That was a big one. Yeah. So those small things like helped me a lot. And also I think the last one that was big one was constraints.
Okay.
I think I kind of got how do I put it, like traumatized once with a shot that I did on Open Season 2 at the time. Was the bear was riding a unicycle while he was juggling. I think it was like three balls and one dog. He was like juggling those things, riding the unicycle, jumping and turning, and on top of a box, and then jumping back to the floor and riding the thing. Like that shot to me was like, man, I still feel the pain. I tried to do it with constraints, and like the juggling was all constrained, was working great. But then once you start to turning the character, moving it away, like everything like moves with the character and doesn't make any more sense.
Right.
And I think that shot was what, I mean, I'm sure that shot was what made me come out with a tool to work with grabbing and releasing things without constraints.
Gotcha.
Or at least like making that easy. And the same mindset as the space switching, where I don't want to marry my constraints. That's the main problem in mind. Like sometimes you are blocking, you need to think about the constraints even before blocking. That's crazy. Like you need to constrain things to block it that way. And then suddenly you need to change your shot or change the frame that the things are constrained, and everything got screwed if you're working with constraint.
Yeah.
So I hated that. And that shot was an example. Like I kept like receiving notes, which is normal. And then my animation was always like almost like doing everything from scratch all over again. Every single shot, every single note that I received. So I came up with that fake constraint tool, which AnimBot now is the X-form relationship.
Okay.
So basically, like you copy uh, a relation. For example, if I'm holding my phone here and there's no constraints, I can pose my phone wherever I want, and then I copy that relationship to something. So I
Yes.
copy that relationship from this to the hand. So if I move the hand down here, I can use that relationship to copy that again.
Yeah.
And that's still in world space.
Yes.
So
Yeah.
for simple things, this is, to me, like, this is much better, because although like you don't get the twinning going on, you can bake that part.
Yeah.
And the rest, like if he leaves the cell phone on the table, you are done. Like you don't need to worry about anything. And if you need to change that, the frame that he puts the cell phone, it's just a regular nudging.
Yeah.
You don't need to care about where the constraints are, because there's no constraints.
You know, there's something to be said about people who are specialized in particular, fields. But one of the things I love about AnimBot is that this is coming from someone who, like you, who's in animation, who is going, how can I do this better? And it's being developed by somebody, not secondhand, so to speak, an animator coming to a developer saying, hey, I'd like to be able to do this. Because that developer is still trying to interpret it from this animator's communication here. That communication's gone with you because you are the animator and the developer, So that's one of the reasons why I really, really just love AnimBot, because it's coming from somebody who's working in it, using the tools and going, how can I make them better based upon my workflow, based upon the feedback that I'm getting from other animators. So it's just absolutely amazing. And the other one here, recovery tool. I think AnimBot is worth its weight in gold for the recovery. When Maya crashes, to be able to pull up your scene back up and not lose work is tremendous. So yeah.
Yeah.
What was the genesis for that one? What's that?
People love that when it works.
Yeah, it works though. I've had maybe a handful of times, where it didn't, but by and large, I would say up in the high 90s, it works.
Yeah.
And so when you're not losing hours of work, that's great.
Yeah. I got a lot of people frustrated with that tool at the beginning of the AnimBot, because I wanted to do because this tool was available in innate tools.
Mm-hmm.
It was a much simpler version, and you need to be very careful with it, because if you didn't hit the recover or just close the window, you couldn't recover anymore. Like it was something like one chance. But it worked.
Yeah.
Like for most cases. And people got used to that. And then when they started using AnimBot, I did it in a totally different way because I wanted to improve it. And at the beginning, it wasn't working 100% of the time.
Yeah.
For some people, it wasn't working at all. And then they couldn't recover things. And then imagine like you are used to work like 2 hours without saving. And now the thing says it's gonna recover, but it doesn't. So it was very frustrating. But now I think it's very robust.
For sure. For sure. And
at
honestly,
people get tired to talk to me about it.
Honestly, even 10 or 15 minutes, because I save a lot. I hit Control S, so I save quite often. But sometimes even a 5 or 10 minutes to go, okay, where was the last time I saved? What did I just, and just trying to even that consciously having to think, what did I last do since I saved? Even if it was 5 or 10 minutes, you're going, what did I do in that time? You don't have to think about that when AnimBot recovery works, because it pulls back up. You're like, okay, I'm just picking back up where I just left off, So yeah, that alone is worth its weight in gold. So kudos to you on that for sure.
That's cool. So where was I?
Developing during Storks.
Right. So in that movie, I was a lead, so I didn't have time to develop any new tools for tools internally there anymore. which was okay. I mean, I was not feeling bad about it because I was learning other things. Oh yeah, I was going to talk about what I developed on Storks. So the main challenge there was the wolves. So the wolves, there was like a pack of wolves that would turn into vehicles, or like they would turn into a boat or to an airplane, to a submarine.
Uh,
So they came up with those storyboards, and then people would look at it. So, okay, okay, you want to do that? Yeah. How? So I got a chance to start working at the very beginning of the movie. I think it was just 5 of us in the animation, and then there was a couple guys on the character effects side, and so we got together to think about it, like how we're gonna do this. So they tried ragdolls, they tried some crowd stuff. And for that particular movie, it didn't work very well because the wolves needed to become like a very specific shape. And the animators still needed to go there and find that wolf and do something with that wolf. It was not like a particle system.
Yeah. That's what I was first thinking. Yeah.
Yeah, that like the animator needed to have that control, and we needed to give the director, which was Doug Sweetland, the power to come up and give a note saying that I want that wolf to smile, or I want that wolf to paddle the boat, like things like that. He needed to have this kind of thing. Like imagine like if you're doing as an FX pass, this would be a nightmare.
Yeah. It is what it is.
I would go to to a department, go back to animation, go back to other department. It would be like a ping pong thing. And we didn't want that. And so the solution that we end up doing was me and another guy there, Melt. His name is Melt Vanderspooi. I don't know. I probably pronounced in the wrong way, but we both got together and thought about it. Like, okay, let's try to do this. So the tool would basically get the rig, because another problem that before talking about the tool, the problem was that we couldn't have 200 rigs in the scene.
Oh,
it was impossible to animate.
I can imagine that. Yeah,
impossible. Like there was no even memory in the computer to open a shot like this. So we needed to somehow to convert those characters to geometry cache. So we made a tool where we could pick it was like this, like we would bring a rig in the scene, and we could convert that rig into a cache, but the rig was still available and hidden somewhere in the scene. So we could use that rig to bring another character that was in a cache state back to rig. Because that animation information was saved somewhere
else. Yeah.
So we could pick like, okay, and it was really fast. Like we could scrub the timeline, it was real time, like all the caches doing whatever. And then we could pick, okay, I want that wolf, I want to animate that wolf. We could pick that wolf, hit a button, it would bring the rig again, only for that wolf.
Yeah. So it's almost kind of like referencing in and cache, right? So you're just swapping out the reference cache.
Almost like this, yeah.
Okay.
But it was faster because the rig was already in the scene.
Yeah.
So
okay.
We didn't need to bring the whole rig.
Yes.
So,
okay.
So it was pretty fast. Like to bring a rig was almost instantaneous, almost. Like it was the time of unhide the rig, hide the cache, and load the animation in that rig.
It was pretty quick, huh?
Yeah, it was like 5 seconds.
Man.
And then we would do a small adjustment, like maybe like making a blink, whatever. And then we could hit a button again. You would cache that rig again, and bring the cache the new caching.
And you could pick a different wolf now if you wanted to, and just,
Yeah,
do all of, oh, that's amazing.
Keeping doing that way. And that was kind of the tool that was developed there. And they kept using that tool for other shows because it was great for the animator to be able to do such a thing. Because otherwise, up to that point, it was a completely different department. Like when there was a lot of characters, was a crowd department or a crowd person that would do it.
Like, yeah.
And you don't have much control of the crowd the same way that we do.
So would the animator still animate all the wolves that were converting into that certain shape? So they would placing this here and making this shape here, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
If you see those shots in the movie, I think it was 4 animators that did all of the shots.
Wow.
Of the wolves. It was me, Joseph Hallmark, Alex Angelis, and Ricardo Yost. Man, if I'm forgetting somebody, they're gonna hate me now. It was 4 or 5. Oh, well, yeah, Dave Wesh.
All right, so you got Dave, it in there.
You did the van, yeah. So, but it was pretty much it. Like that, one animator would tackle that shot in the same way that he was animating others. It was a little bit more challenging for sure, but it was not like he would spend like 3 months in the shot.
Just shape these wolves around this proxy shape, right? This airplane or submarine. Man, that's really, really remarkable. Yeah, very neat.
Thing that I ended up doing where one of the hardest part was to squash and stretch the whole thing. Like if you have a car, we wanted to kind of give like a stretch.
Yeah.
Like we couldn't do it like bringing one rig and then changing things.
Oh,
another
right,
rig,
right.
We needed like kind of a lattice on top of it. So that was one tool that I wrote there. It's a kind of a lattice, and it squashes the proxy. So the animator can see what's going on, and then he would hit a button and he would send that whole work of recaching to the farm.
Okay. That's amazing. Very, very cool. So now, I mean, kind of just as I'm thinking about this, it's just so much more advanced than when you first kind of started, writing scripts for Macromedia Flash at the time, and just that development. You're helping develop and write tools for a major animation studio. Just remarkable as I kind of, as I think about that. So from Storks, was that one of your last shows at Sony?
Was the second to last.
Okay.
I worked on Emoji.
Okay.
For a while. And then when I was working at Emoji, I was just like stepped back from lead. I was working just as an animator.
Okay.
But at that point was where I had, during Storks, I was kind of like brainstorming so much stuff because it's, like if you get like tools and AnimBot now, I think people can understand the difference. And I had that kind of feeling in my mind since then. Like I can do something much, much better, much, much robust. Other tools that I want to do it's still not here. But I was not doing it during Storks. And as I mentioned, like it was okay. But when I started working on Emoji, I think all of that came back. And then it was something that I needed to make a decision, like what I'm going to do. Like, am I going to actually develop this or just drop it? And eventually, like I found, okay, I think I found at that time that most people around, like in the industry, at least in Vancouver, and knew about me because of tools.
Okay.
Not because I worked as an animator.
Okay.
That was the funny part. People didn't even think I was. Some people doesn't even know that I was an animator.
Yeah.
So I thought to myself, okay, either I take advantage of that fact that accidentally happened, or I just, keep doing whatever I'm doing.
Right.
But somehow I was not happy working on emoji. I think probably like the show itself was not very uh, how do I say that, like challenging for an animator or
Gotcha.
something like that. Which is okay, like it happens, of course, like
Right.
it's an up and downs that in that point. And then after that came Spider-Man, which was awesome,
Yeah.
and I left before that. But I had to make a decision. Like I had to think to myself, okay, what do I want to do? Either I try to make those things, or I don't. But I couldn't do it the way that it was set up.
Yeah.
In the hotel, I couldn't do it that. It was not healthy to do it that way.
Yeah.
I was working way too much and having too much responsibilities without even being paid for it. Like I was just being paid as an animator. Why I was doing all of those things? I was doing just to my own willing, and decided to try to find a place with a work balance to actually make it happen. So I came up to the studio, and one way that I was thinking was, if they give the ownership of the scripts, not A tools. I don't want that anymore. I wanted to write from scratch, but I wanted to own it. I didn't want to write and then be laid off again and lose everything. And also I wanted to make that public, because that was what A tools brought to me. Like the fact that it was public made people know about me.
Yeah, for sure.
So that was the thing that I was trying to talk with them about. But unfortunately, like in a big studio, I learned it doesn't work that way. Like if you are working at a studio, but with tools it's different, because if I wanted to do something that, let's say, Disney was going to use or Method was going to use, it couldn't be something that Sony owns it, because
Right.
with all of those contracts with those big companies, they are really, really like keen to know that they are not going to have any IP problems. They wanted to know that this is really your IP. Am I going to have like, one studio suing another because you're using their tools?
Yeah.
So that I knew. So it came up to a point where either I leave the company to do whatever I wanted to do, or I just push it for the future kind of thing. But the cool thing about it was that, and I couldn't afford like leaving the company without any salary,
Yeah.
and do it, like at home without. I have a family. I need
Right.
to provide, right? So I left. I didn't leave right away, but I talked to a few studios around. I mean, friends around, to see if there's any spot available for animator. And then I got, in the same week, I got 3 offers right away. And
Very cool.
because of A tools, I go to those 3 companies and talk to those guys in the interview. All they mention is about A tools. And I said, okay, and that was kind of the push that I needed.
Gotcha.
To know that I
Kind of
was
that
going
confirmation,
to the right direction.
Yeah.
And I kind of went back to work at Method, and they had a different kind of contract. So I was able to
Develop it during that.
Yeah, develop at home doing that, but keeping the IP.
Gotcha.
I thought I was going to develop everything that I wanted in 4 months. That was kind of my goal. Took 2 years. Like I had no idea what I was what I was getting into. Yeah, and that was kind of like I was scary at the point, because when I left, the decision of leaving Sony was not just like I'm leaving a studio, it was kind of like I'm leaving my dream job, because I know that I couldn't work at any other big studios again, because of this fact that the IP.
Gotcha.
So it was kind of a big decision for me. And that was kind of a very heavy weight on my shoulders during those 2 years, because I didn't know that what I was doing was going to, like do anything right, or if that was the right thing to do. But then, and I thought it was going to be just 4 months. And then after 4 months, I was just like, I pretty much like did 10% of what I wanted. And then I said, holy shit, I'm screwed. I think I didn't do the right thing. It was kind of hard. So I kind of, okay, let me push a little bit harder. So I started working more, and then doing things. I was just like doing for myself this time. Nobody else was using, just me. And then that was January 2017. So I went all the way to November that year, developing up to like maybe 50% of where I wanted to do. Because the problem was I couldn't, because I had A tools already there, I couldn't develop a tool where there was not at least what A tools had.
Gotcha.
It was a good and a bad thing for me.
Yeah.
Because I couldn't make I couldn't convince anyone to pay for something if it doesn't have all of those tools, at least that is free. So by November, I decided to release like a beta, just because I needed people to use it to see if they were going to have interest in it. And then I made a Patreon page with people that could give some money to the project, and I was going to give like 2 or 3 times that money back when the tool was ready. So I got quite a few people. Like it was quite a good noise, and that helped me like pushing forward. If it wasn't for that, like I would have stopped it there.
Gotcha. Man, that's amazing. Yeah.
And it was another year, like that was November 2017. So it was all 2018, keep developing. And by the end of 2018 was actually when I first released it officially, like for selling licenses for it.
That was 20 what? 18?
Beginning of 2019.
2019. Okay. Gotcha.
It's been 2 years. And
now, do you develop it solely by yourself, or do you have help now, or how does that work?
The development is all by myself.
All by yourself.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
I had help I still have help from all people that use it, basically.
Yeah.
Like we have a group on Facebook. They give ideas.
Yep.
They mention stuff that could be better and things like that. So I keep developing that way. And
how much of your time is troubleshooting and making it better versus now adding in other stuff that you want to add in?
I think that there's no like one answer to this. I think it depends on the stage. I can tell how it was so far. So when I released in 2019, it's funny because when you make something that is a beta, people are kind of more relaxed to errors and things. So they don't tell much. They don't say like, oh, this is not working or whatever. When you charge for it, man, it was like a rain of And then that first year was basically like fixing things.
Gotcha.
2019 was just fixing. And also one thing that I had to do, that was also a funny thing. During the beta, 0 companies got in touch with me.
Okay.
No companies at all. When I released officially, by the end of the first week, there was like 100 emails from companies that wanted to know how they
Purchase
they could
licenses
buy.
and stuff.
Yeah. And the problem was at the time, I didn't have the licensing system for companies that I wanted.
Gotcha.
It was very like for individuals, because companies don't want like to install for every single machine, and
Gotcha.
every person has a password.
They want it on a
And
server where they can distribute that.
Yeah,
Huh?
and they need internet to get a license. They don't want that. They
Yeah.
need to be completely offline to their companies, and in a system that are more robust and usually like floating licenses.
Yeah.
That was what I was going for. But I knew that I wanted to do this, but I didn't know how. And there was this guy from a CTO from a big studio out there. He came to me and said, "Okay, so we talked like for a couple hours one day on the phone, and he was kind of more like almost like mentoring me towards something that it's good for a big studio in that sense."
Gotcha.
And they mentioned licensing systems that are professional, that was well out there, like RLM, for example, which is the one that I ended up implementing. But there was an extra thing that I had to pay. It's not very cheap, the system.
Okay.
So you have to have like, it was a bet for me, like, but at the same time, because I had all of that people from companies talking with me about it, it was a risk, but not very high, because I knew that those people
Nobody's
wanted
wanted it. Yeah.
So I ended up buying that system, implementing it. It was the best thing that I did.
Very cool.
It was hard, actually. It was not very easy for me to do it, even though it was a kind of ready system. The beginning was kind of hard, because I had to do all of those things that I was doing, like fixing bugs, replying emails. I didn't have email help desk software or anything. Like, it was falling, like my mom would send me an email, and then a guy from iAnimate would send another, and then a guy from that big studio was saying another thing. It was all mixed up.
You're like, Mom, I'll get you your license. Just hang on a sec. I got ILM who's ordering, Oh, sorry, Mom, you weren't getting a license.
Yeah.
You were just saying hi. Yeah.
Oh my God.
That's funny.
Yeah, it was unbearable. Like, there was the first year, I couldn't reply to everybody. Like, I left people hanging, because after like 5 months, we only replied that guy that mentioned that he couldn't download because the link is not working. Like 5 months later.
Gotcha.
So there was a lot of those emails there that I didn't have a chance to reply.
Yeah.
But then eventually, like, I got all of those companies that wanted set up and everything. Like, everything started to come together, and then I started to automate other things. I got this help desk software to help me responding emails. And by the end of the year, the first year, I got to a point where, okay, now I can sit and plan what I'm going to do next year, because I didn't write anything new the first year. It was just fixing bugs and attending customers. But then 2020 was when I got more organized, and things started to flow better. And then I started to, that was when I sat down, okay, I have that list of bugs and issues. Let me go through all of it. I mean, all the main ones at least. And then I went boom, 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 boom. That was when I released, I think it was 1.4. That version was the very actual like version that I was able to take care of all of those small issues. It was not the big issues I took care of in the first year, but all those small ones I took care of that version. And then it kind of set me into a place where, okay, and now I can develop new things. And then that's what kind of I'm dividing my time now. It's developing new things and also keep, automating what I can and having people to help me, like writing tutorials, videos, and
yeah, I was just
even
curious
helping me
to see how much you've got where you still want to implement, because I look at AnimBot right now, and you brought up tutorials, which is fantastic, because I go, and I don't mean this in a negative way, there's almost too many tools in AnimBot, and I mean that in a good way, because you go, there's so much at your disposal, there's so many great stuff. So I was just kind of curious, based upon what's already in there, what you have in mind to go, okay, I could still add this though, I still want to add that. It's already just an amazing, complete tool set. So yeah, just kind of curious to see what you had in mind. You're going, no, there's still some stuff I'd definitely like to implement.
Yeah.
Or
there's one really, really big one actually that's gonna come out probably like next month. I've been working that for a few months already. I think it's the last tool that I wanted to make since the beginning.
Gotcha.
But I still have others. Like I still want tools to help with physics a little bit. What's it called? Like ballistic ruler. Things.
What is that?
Have you heard about that? Like ballistic ruler is something that I never use it, but I've seen some stuff about it, and that's something that I really wanted to do. It's something like this. Like it's almost like a motion trail, but you set point A and point B and the amount of frames that you want, and that traces a trajectory.
Wow.
That's physically correct from one point to another.
Very cool.
So, for example, if you're like not a bouncing ball, but if you're doing something like a character jumping from one building to another, they used something like that on a Spider-Man movie.
Okay.
I don't know exactly how that worked, but I saw in the video out there.
I'm also thinking like Angry Birds when they're shooting them out of the catapult or something, or the slingshot or something like that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Because it helps a lot. Like it's crazy how you, especially for VFX, because you need that realistic thing.
Gotcha.
And that's something that most animators doesn't really get much deep into it, because it's hard to think about it. Like you don't do the math on the computer to do it.
Yeah.
For example, like for animating let's say a character jumps from a waterfall at the top of the waterfall. If you think like a bouncing ball, this guy's gonna be accelerating until he hits the floor. Right? That's not what happens in physics. At certain point there, it's gonna reach like they call the terminal velocity, where the air friction equals the acceleration of the gravity, so it falls in a linear fashion. That point.
Okay, I got you.
And that's kind of almost like impossible to think about in the animation when you're animating, because it depends on a few things, like depends on the size of the objects, the weight of the object. So that's one thing that I wanted to make like something simpler that helps, not 100% precise in physics.
Yeah.
It's a ruler.
Yeah.
So at least you know what's the physically correct.
Yeah. Start from a starting point,
almost
right?
Correct. Yeah.
That's great, man.
And that one that I'm doing that I'm talking about, that's actually I'm calling it temp controls, and that's the last thing that I wanted to do for spacing switching.
Okay.
That we're talking about.
Have you had, obviously you're very booked up here, but have you had any ideas to take AnimBot AnimBot into 3D Studio Max or even Blender and things of that nature that other people are animating in?
Yeah, that's actually one of the things that I had from the beginning. Like, I wanted to have a tool that's the same kind of problem that I had at Method before, where I jumped from one studio to another and I didn't know how to animate anymore. I want to make something like across softwares as well.
Gotcha.
Although I think Maya is kind of
It's industry standard.
Yeah. There's still, like, I have a lot of friends that still work in 3D Max in some studios.
Yeah.
And they had this problem where, like, they had to adapt to the software.
Yeah.
So I want to do it, but I want to make at least, like, AnimBot to a point where it's kind of, okay, this is everything, at least like the major things that I wanted to do.
Yeah.
And now I can branch it out, because when I do this, it's gonna, I probably not gonna be able to do anything new for it for a while.
Gotcha. Yeah.
So I'm kind of waiting for the right moment to
Gotcha.
start.
No, that makes sense. Yeah, just kind of curious. Yeah, Maya is obviously the industry standard. That's what we use here at Animate. But I was just kind of curious. Obviously, other studios use, I know Blur, I think they use 3D Studio Max, and you mentioned VFX. Sometimes they use 3D Studio Max, and then even Blender's kind of trying to make some headways into this. So I was just kind of curious. Does that make sense? Alan, I've really appreciated our time. You've been a great help to iAnimate. I know you offer us a discount for all of our students and instructors. My brother and I have a small studio. We use it in-house. We love the tools. And so it was really an opportunity to pick your brain, hear about, your career, as well as the man behind the A tools and AnimBot. So
yeah, it was a pleasure, because many people I like to tell the story, because it's kind of I've worked so much time, like, just in my computer by myself.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of a relief, like, to tell about it, because it's kind of a hard thing to work so much time. I mean, not now everybody knows how it is, like, with the lockdown. So I was like that way before.
And one of the other things too, just again for our audience, I've really appreciated you have the price tiers. You've mentioned, ILM, and I'm sure there's plenty of other big studios who are using it on that scale. But you've also made the price tier very affordable for students and independent artists and such, where they're saving a ton of time using these tools, and it's reasonably priced. So I really appreciate you doing that. So if you're listening to this, you haven't used AnimBot, definitely check it out. It's a fantastic tool. Like I said, almost too many good things in there. So you're going to find a handful of tools, no question, that you're going to just absolutely love. I think as you continue to dive into it, you're going to find some new cool tools. So Alan, thank you again. I appreciate your time, and all the best, man.
Yeah, great pleasure.
All right.
Thanks so much for having me.
Absolutely. With that, we're out.